This is the Convene podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Convene Talk, where we discuss interesting stories that appear in our popular newsletter, News Junkie. My name is Magdalena Tanasova, Digital Media Editor at Convene. Casey, you picked an interesting article for today's discussion. So can you give our listeners some background information and what caught your eye there?
Sure. This is Casey Gale, Managing Editor. And I chose a story from The Drum called All the World's a Stage, Next Gen Live Events Are Building the Experience Economy. And in the article, Invent Group's Christina McCubry talks about how the landscape of live events and experiential marketing is transforming. She says that's largely because of this convergence of digital innovation and pandemic-influenced consumer palettes that have left people desiring more human connection in an authentic way. Just for some background, the experience economy is this idea of providing customers with memorable experiences that add emotional value beyond the functional benefits of a product or service. And the author argues that to really wow audiences today, organizations need to tap into that creativity-driven storytelling in order to really engage them. She said a huge part of that I think is important to our audience in particular is the hybrid event experience. The author says that the future of these events lies in their ability to offer distinct yet still brand-aligned experiences for online and live audiences. And while at the beginning of the pandemic, that was often having the same event broadcast live online, now virtual components are more than just an extension of the in-person event. They're designed as their own standalone experience. And the author said she expects to see technology like augmented and virtual reality and more interactive platforms to create a more immersive experience in the future. And then she also talked about just in-person experiences and cited the increased power of live events. Last year, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and Bruce Springsteen injected this huge life into the economy at a time when we were facing a recession, which just goes to show how people are really willing to invest in these special experiences. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this.
Hi, I'm Barbara Palmer, Deputy Editor. I was really fascinated by this because we've been looking at the VML Future 100, and one of the trends that caught my eye, they called it pro-social effervescence. And it was exactly about this topic. It was about how there was this desire, what happens when people get together, and how brands can tap into that. And this idea of collective effervescence, which is a term, just talks about what, how we align together and it lifts our mood. It takes us out of ourselves and actually has an effect on us towards altruism. There's research that shows that people are more likely to give and to think of others rather than just themselves when they are having this collective effervescence. I did feel this note of caution about the idea of trying to extract monetary value out of this. And I just imagined all the ways that if it goes straight from getting together, making money, that there's going to be all these versions of the Fire Festival, which, as you recalled, was just train wreck. I just hope that it's not so extractive. And, just thinking about Taylor Swift and the effect of collective effervescence, it just made me think of that trend of friendship bracelets, that everybody would start, making friendship bracelets, and they all tried to learn the lyrics to sing along, and how it was just a wonderful example of what happens when you all get together. But there were lots of people excluded from that because of the cost. So I feel like there's so much opportunity to create those experiences for people who really need them. Like I said, there's just a little alarm bell about how extractive it all sounds.
I think you're right, Barbara. And I think the author was really careful to note that people want authentic experiences, that they'll know if it's something that's just a money grab. And I think that the emphasis is sort of like what you were saying with the friendship bracelets and having the collective experience of going to something like a concert together. People want to feel part of something that's bigger than themselves.
Hi, this is Jen Dienst, senior editor. So 2 things you said kind of perked up my interest. First, Fire Festival. Fun fact, Fire Festival is coming back, according to some articles I read last year. I don't know if it's still actually, this was mid 2023, but the founder announced that he is trying to relaunch that brand. So stay tuned. I'm very curious to see what happens there. But going back to another point that you made about Taylor Swift, I thought a really good example of that was this weekend with Super Bowl, which I did not watch. However, I'm one of very few, because I read yesterday that, and I think this speaks to the power of live events, it was the most watched, televised event in a generation. And I think I saw a headline from CNN that said that it was the most watched since the moon landing. So it was over 113 million people. So I know for listeners, Barbara's face is hilarious. She's very surprised. But what I thought was interesting too was it wasn't just, watched on TV and streamed. People were paying, what was it, upwards of $1 million for box seats. And I think just actual regular seats were in the tens of thousands of dollars and up, depending on where you wanted to sit. And I don't know what that speaks to. I'm curious to know what y'all's thoughts are. Does that speak to just who was playing? And I don't care about football, so I have no idea. Does it speak to just the power of this event in general and events more broadly? Does it speak to the power of Taylor Swift, who arguably, as we wrote about a couple of times last year, is definitely helping to push live events into a new stratosphere when it comes to just economic impact in general. So I'm curious to know what y'all's thoughts are on that. If you tuned in, what do you think it was all about?
I totally think Taylor had a big influence on that, just because I know I read before the Super Bowl that more women's products were advertising than ever before, under the assumption that she would be there. And I also read there was an independent marketing firm who studied how much of an impact Taylor had on the NFL. And it was something worth $330 million just because of all of the additional press they received in association with her. And I just have to think she's pulling in a totally different audience, younger people, more women. And I think that speaks to just how becoming more inclusive can really help any brand, because this is a typically male-viewed sport, male-dominated sport. And I think having an access point for kids and women to watch has really benefited everyone in a business sense here.
This is Kurt Wagner, digital editor, in not a business sense, but she's really giving the right fits these days. And so she's also, just by being present, causing them to go a little nutso and worry more about something that's not as important as what they should be worrying about. Congressmen and things like that. The one thing I wanted to mention here, if we bring it back to events, business events, the idea of the hybrid thing, I think everything needs to get cheaper. I mean, the biggest pain point for organizers is how hard it is to do a hybrid event, because you're doing 2 events at once, and just doing a face-to-face event isn't cheap anymore. or isn't necessarily reasonable anymore. So trying to do like this kind of a great experience online and the physical event at the same time is going to be a problem until budgets loosen up, I guess. Unless you know somebody who knows Taylor Swift to come to your event.
I think something I like that this author pointed out was that they really should be two separate experiences. And I think that can be taken also as not happening at the same time. It can be a separate online experience that happens at some other point in the year, which just from talking to meeting planners seems like something that's more achievable to them. I know it's really difficult to host online and in person at the same time just because of resources and budget, like you said. So it seems like having that option to kind of extend the event by having a separate online component sometime in the future seems doable for a lot of planners.
Speaking of hybrid experiences, one of the things that I thought was really creative about the Super Bowl coverage is that apparently Nickelodeon aired the Super Bowl and Dora the Explorer explained. I don't even know what all that stuff is. And I didn't know that Nickelodeon was airing it, but I would have made an effort to watch just because. But it really does speak to what you said, that the audience has widened because of her involvement. I wonder how much is this pent up need to belong? Because I watched the Super Bowl for the first time, I think, in 15 years. And I live in the Bay Area, and the 49ers were playing. And I felt proud of them, which I've never identified with the team before. I just thought they had so much composure, and I wanted them to win because I feel like everyone's so down on San Francisco. They're kicking it around. But it just really spoke to like this need for belonging and to like be part of something bigger than yourselves, like my city and my team. And I like how they're acting.
I love how you pointed out the Nickelodeon aspect. I'm pretty sure that's the first time they've ever done that. And they had SpongeBob and Patrick as commentators on their channel, which is pretty cute. And they, like you said, they had Dora the Explorer explaining different plays to people. And that's just another way of becoming more inclusive. It's a way to welcome kids into it and help them understand the rules of the game, which is pretty cool.
So smart.
Well, you can imagine I did not watch the Super Bowl.
You don't watch Nickelodeon either?
No. I'm skipping on those two usually. Kind of bringing it back to the article. I read it and I was like, duh. I mean, we've been writing about that since forever. And I did not think the article did the business events industry justice by comparing Taylor Swift's Eras tour and Beyonce's whatever tour and their experiences to business events. Also within the events industry, comparing associations events and corporate events. It's completely different. The budgets are different. The experiences that you can put in there are so vastly different. So I feel that sometimes grand ideas are great. Yes, you can always learn something, but you have to be realistic that it's not applicable to everyone and everything in the world. So I was a little bit upset when I saw these examples. Yes, they generate money for sure. They stir the economy. Events do that for sure, no matter if they're association, corporate, or whatever. But yeah, just do us justice. Don't just bring such examples and be like, yes, that's it. That's the experience economy. And I expected a bit more in terms of explanation when it came to the experience economy and how it's evolving. And I kind of missed that in the article. I thought you would expand on that. Like, how is this experience economy really evolving since, 98 when it was first pinned as a term? maybe something we can explore in the future.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess that's the idea, is maybe this author didn't say it, but is finding that thing for your event that it's going to bring all of your people together, like whether it's, I don't know, construction workers or business event planners for PCMA, or, doctors of some sort. Find that thing that you can have at your event that would bring that sense of community and would bring them all together and wouldn't, so in other words, the Taylor Swift of surgeons or something like that.
Yeah, I think the highlight here is really just that there are things planners can focus on, and that they really need to make sure they're creating a collective event that people feel part of something bigger than themselves and can really rally around together. And like Kurt said, I think that's achievable on any scale. It doesn't have to be a concert or something like that, but I think all planners can think about ways to bring people together in a way that feels authentic and feels like they're seeing themselves in the storytelling throughout their event.
Mm-hmm. Well, someone who I talked to during CL, sorry, Barbara, said that her big reason to return to CL every year is Hospitality Helping Hands, because she feels so good about doing something good for the host city or for somebody in the host city, and that it's also fun. She sees to see all these other people who also always do it. I mean, it's sort of that kind of thing, and that sort of fits into some other trends we saw in that VML report about, doing things for the better good, I guess.
Yeah. I think it speaks, I think, to the power of music. And we've written about that, just that, if you imagine watching a movie without the soundtrack, and I think that at most big events, music is really used as a way to energize and gather the crowd. And I think just leaving music to chance or not thinking about it very much, the role that it plays, I think that's a missed opportunity.
I think that's a great point, Barbara. And just thinking about PCMA events, we always have many musical components. Sometimes it's just the music that's pumped through the convention center before a session starts, or it might be, an opening performer or someone who performs at a reception. And it doesn't need to be a superstar, but experiences like that are really memorable. It's things that people want to share on their social media, that get people talking and really leave an impression.
100%. Even the other way around, just to Barbara's example, watching a movie without the soundtrack, and sometimes I've actually liked a certain song or a soundtrack much better just because I've seen it in a movie. So it also works vice versa. Music at events is incredible. And I still remember EduCon a couple of years ago when it was in New Orleans, the bands that played there, I started following them. Of course, I did not know them before, but it was such a great experience. I was like, yeah, I really want to listen to that. And kind of, it brings me back to that event. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, that was great, Casey. Thank you.
Yeah, good discussion.
We do have lots of stories on this. I can send you some links if you want to put it in the show notes.
Absolutely. Well, there will be many links in the show notes, as many as I can get in. And yeah, reminder to everybody. By the way, we have cats and dogs on this podcast that you cannot see, but have lots of animal activity in the meantime. So if you like and want to support us, give us a 5-star review, and also remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss our discussions, which are quite fun. And until next time.
Bye.